Welcome to another art video. Today I'm bringing out all my sketchbooks to try out a new medium, acrylic markers, with a variety of brush tips so I can compare how all of these work on a variety of surfaces. I'll be swatching colors, blending and sketching with the 3 different marker tips, and discover how this art medium works from absolutely zero, as I've never used acrylic markers before. As an acrylic painter, I had my eyes on them for a while, so when Arrtx offered to send me a box of their new collection to test and review, I was excited to give them a try. While they gifted me the product, the review itself isn't sponsored, and I'll be expressing my honest opinion, both positive and negative. I got the set of 72 acrylic markers with replaceable pen nibs. The box itself is very sturdy, which is necessary for this many individual markers. I'd seen in other review videos of different marker sets, because like I said, I'd been eyeing these for a while and was doing my own research, that the color codes came as stickers we'd have to put on each marker ourselves. But I'm happy to report that Arrtx moved away from that, and each marker is already labeled. The individual colors don't have names, only numbers, which I do find a shame. Especially in large sets, it can be difficult to remember favorite shades just by a number without the association a descriptive color name can create. The set also comes with a prepared swatch sheet, already numbered, which I appreciate a lot. Now I'm just figuring this out as I go, following the instructions on how to use these markers for the very first time, shaking them, then pressing the nib until ink flows into it. I was a bit over-eager at first. You really don't need to shake these all that hard. And then it's best to press the nib and wait a few seconds afterwards, as the ink needs time to flow downwards and soak the pen nib. I became more patient as I went along, and that resulted in a more even color flow when swatching. Yellows are usually where I'm a bit picky when it comes to color choices. A lot of art supply sets come with very similar yellow shades, as it's difficult to vary those in darkness or saturation without them turning brown or orange. I have to say, the yellow selection here is promising for the rest of the set, as each had a clear, distinct shade, and there was variety in chroma and value as well. The oranges and reds were similarly distinct choices, while the pinks had a bit more overlap. I'd have liked another mid-dark shade for the reds before going to that deep burgundy instead of those pink-red mid-tones. I always expected acrylic markers to be really messy, but even just swatching put that fear to rest. They didn't bleed through my swatch paper at all, for one, which makes me hope that these will work in a variety of my sketchbooks. The blues have some amazing dark shades, but the midtones from 415 to 435 are a bit too close to each other for my taste. Maybe another lighter variation would have been good to have here, though there are 2 more teal blue shades later in the box to complement these. The greens are the largest, most varied color group, I think, with warms and cools, high and low chroma, dark and light choices. Though I wish that 505 had leaned a bit lighter or mintier, as a highlight shade. Once I reached the grays, neutrals and browns, I had gotten the hang of these markers and wanted to try changing out the pen nibs. That turned out to be really simple. I went with a brush pen tip here, and now you can see that I really am a beginner when it comes to markers like these. I was worried I'd damage this more delicate tip if I pushed it down too hard, so I went in with my fingers to apply pressure instead. I don't think that's actually necessary, as the brush seems sturdy now that I've used them more, And I got quite a bit of acrylic ink under my fingernails like an idiot. These acrylic paints are actually really staining if you get them on your fingers. You have to wash your hands immediately or you're stuck with the paint for a little while. The second replacement pen nib has a different shape to the basic one. Let's look at them all here. This one has a more pointed oval shape, like the top of an egg. They are called hazelnut tips by Arrtx, which makes sense. I think the color flowed more easily in these, which led to some quite liquid swatches at first until I adjusted my shaking and pushing method. Then they were more precise and had a less gritty feeling tip than the basic one. Immediately, I'm a big fan of these brush tips. The acrylic ink flows more evenly and the application is smoother and can be more detailed. I improved my ink activation technique using tissues and kept alternating between different pen nib types as I imagined that these neutral shades would be what I used the most. There are some warm and cool browns, grey tones, and a couple more peachy flesh tones, as well as 3 glittery shades towards the end, of which I like the gold the best for its truly shiny finish. While the bright colors match their pen caps relatively well in shades, the grey tones and browns really need a swatch sheet to refer to. While sketching, I kept reaching for shades that looked different than what I expected and really had to keep the swatch sheet next to me to orient myself. It can be a bit intimidating to try out a new material for the very first time on camera. There's always a learning curve, after all. I sketched a quick movie scene-inspired portrait here to get a feel for them, and I started off quite hesitantly. You can see that some of the colors are more liquid and transparent than others. I've taken care to shake and activate each marker the same for review purposes, but some might need additional shaking to get the fluid to mix thoroughly. Also, did you notice some of those flakes stuck to the color in my swatches, and here for that salmon color, for example? Some of the pen nibs shed fibers at first, which I dabbed away, and then luckily happened less and less as I went on using the pens. It's specifically the basic marker tips that happened with more often. Overall, I think the neutral colors really tie this palette together quite well. At first, I really didn't know what I'm doing. I just went with the flow, trying out different colors and pen types. Despite what I expected, the 3mm basic ones aren't actually great at filling in large surfaces. It's the brush tips that are much better suited to even area filling application. By the way, if you think an area looks uneven after you've laid it down, give the paint a moment. I noticed that these paints then dried very flat and smooth. Some techniques that I gravitated towards early on was dabbing on color in quick strokes with the hazelnut and basic pens, and then blending into those with the brush pen, or using the tip of the brush for details on top. Instead of blending two colors into each other, I let the bottom layers shine through the new opaque strokes on top of it for more visual mixing. The reason I like acrylics is their endless layering capability. You can just continue painting and overpainting, experimenting and playing. I'm happy to report that's the case for acrylic markers too. Even the lightest shades are opaque, and my messy sketch dried surprisingly flat and harmonious, despite me layering like 4 different faces on top of each other until I was happy. These dry really quickly. As soon as the surface is no longer shiny, they are pretty much touch dry. Perfect for sketchbooks, where some other media might need more time to air dry before I can close it. Even this thin, pretty flimsy sketchbook paper didn't let the colors bleed through, which I'm really happy about. The next surface I'm testing them on comes with texture. A rough gesso layer in my old watercolor sketchbook. I'd painted with gesso over an old stained page, and since acrylic markers are supposed to work on pretty much any surface, I gave them a try here. I was worried those flakes from the pen tips would show up again, maybe scraping against the rough gesso. But that really seems to have been only an issue when I used the pen nibs for the very first time. I took a similar approach to before, not filling in surfaces completely, but letting the white of the page shine through and create a more luminous look. This is after all a scene showing Rivendell from Lord of the Rings, so an airy, dreamlike quality was what I wanted. If you enjoy movie-themed sketching sessions, take a look at the poll on my Patreon. I'm planning a big sketchbook session video in which I watch a long movie and sketch scenes and characters in real time, so that we can all have a virtual movie night together and draw. At least that's the concept idea. Again, I used the brush pens to fill in larger areas evenly. Even the ridges of the gesso surface were no issue for those. Sometimes I'd let a pen's color be less opaque on purpose, not shaking it when I noticed the transparency. That way I could glaze over my opaque layers to unify colors. While I'd originally planned to wrap up my test drawings here, these went by so quickly that I couldn't stop sketching more. I think speed is a key element when it comes to these markers. If you want to quickly block in colors, draw thumbnails or create accents on a sketchbook page, not needing a brush or water, not needing to activate or mix paints, and just having that immediate splash of color really makes a tempo difference. I can tell because of how short the video footage turned out, with very little empty space I had to edit out. There's an immediacy and intensity to these markers that I really truly enjoy, and I say that as a slower artist. On the other hand, I have to admit that I struggled to make smooth blends or create delicate art with these. That might be a skill issue on my end. I'm really not great when it comes to getting a drawing right on the very first pass. But these markers are the most delicate of mediums, all in all. If you're looking to create finished, detailed illustrations with these, I'd recommend going with a lot of the brush pen tips, or even getting a set of exclusively those, as they are the easiest to blend and apply very smoothly for a flat, clean look. Personally, I enjoyed having a mix of pens here, though. There's something strangely satisfying about the scribbly lines created by the solid brush tips. And the hazelnut tips especially feel pleasant to draw with and can vary line thickness at different angles. Here I'm sketching a composition for a painting I'm planning. Lúthien in the Halls of Mandos, a scene from the Silmarillion. I think I'll end up using these markers for composition and lighting sketches a lot, because the range of grey shades was perfect for decisive shadow and light block-ins. This is the thinking stage of my art, when I'm really digging into shapes and values, and these markers were great for that. The sketches start out messy, but with each layer I can carve out a new, better understanding for what I'm trying to create. So, what are my thoughts on these? Presentation, packaging, and especially how easy and clean to use these were are all a positive surprise. Though the pen cap to color match isn't always the most accurate, and I wish we had color names instead of numbers only. The different pen nibs, which I thought could turn out gimmicky, really do have their own strengths and weaknesses. And I found having a variety of them, especially amongst my most used colors, was really convenient. I'll probably exchange more of the basic pen tips for the brushes and hazelnut shapes as I go along, and the replacement process is very simple. The color selection is good, could have used maybe 2 or 3 light pastel-y greens or blues, but the selection of warm and cool grays as well as browns is wonderful, and the shades are really opaque. They sometimes need to be reactivated by shaking them and pushing the pen tip down once or twice, and I kept a sheet of paper for testing close by. They worked well on all the different surfaces I tested them on, were mostly opaque on tone paper, though I did sometimes have to layer them a bit, and didn't bleed even through thin sketchbook pages, which is a huge plus for me. I don't think these will ever be what I reach for when it comes to creating large, detailed, finished paintings, though I've seen other artists create absolute masterworks with them, so probably a skill issue. If you're trying out acrylic markers for the very first time, as I am here, I think this set with a wide array of colors, but more importantly 3 different pen nib types, is a great entry point to try out a variety of options instead of committing to an entire set of one type. This is where this review was supposed to be over. But while I was editing my video, I realized that in just the 1 week since, I'd actually reached for these markers a lot. When sketching tiny thumbnails, illustration ideas, or even just to add splashes of color here or there. They were incredibly convenient for when I didn't want to bring out my whole painting setup, but still wanted color, and I think that's the most honest review I can give any art supply. I keep reaching for it without thinking. If you enjoy sketching in mixed media, then this may be the same for you too. And the different pen tips enhance that mixed media feeling even more. I ended up using these a lot immediately and really like how they fit into my sketching process, especially to warm up in the morning or quick color block-ins. And I think there's a lot of potential here for mixed media techniques. I really enjoy the color selection, and the gray tones round out the more vibrant shades beautifully. I even went further with a close-up on Lufian's face to figure out the lighting I want here. I used a variety of colored pencils in between acrylic marker layers. The softer and intenser the pencil, the better, as it does need to grip on this quite smooth surface. Again, these are endlessly layerable, and when I didn't like the proportions of the first face I drew, I went over it all again with more layers until I was happy. Since I was using the white a lot, I wanted to switch that one to a brush pen tip as well, as I enjoy those the most. And they are the best suited for small details like white highlights. I expected this to be a whole ordeal, but I really just pulled out the pen tip, dropped it in a jar of water, and later rinsed that until clean, and replaced it with the wanted brush tip. You're supposed to store your used tips in water, so I'll keep this one in here. I used distilled water, and I'll see how reusability goes in future videos. For how busy I was during that week, this is actually a lot of unplanned sketching for me, and surprisingly colorful. I found myself on multiple occasions just picking 2 or 3 colors, no references or plan, and just doodle with them. Both enjoying the smooth brushes and the scraggly, expressive lines of the basic pen nibs. I even took 3 shades with me to a cafe, just sketching while talking to a friend, as their barrier of entry is so low. They need no space and are really simple to bring along. I still have to figure out my favorite shades, and because the pen caps aren't always a great match, that color selection can take a while, but the swatch sheet is definitely helping with that. Thank you so much to Arrtx for sending me this product, and I hope I gave you all a comprehensive first impression of how these multi-tip markers work. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in my next art video.